All right, so I got some video here of some coaches and some things that I think we need to kind of cover and probably do a better job at on when you're talking about the swing. So let's just kind of get into it. I don't want to make this a really long video, but it's probably going to be fairly lengthy because we got to cover quite a few things. Um, so we have an instructor here that's telling you, what not to do, right? He's telling you don't lead with your knob. He's saying do not do this, right? He's saying don't do this. Don't lead with your elbow. Don't do any of this. He's got these guys watching him, right? Like he's got all the answers. And I want you guys to understand a couple things. So first things first, he's going to get into a position, right? He's going to try to sell you on the fact that, none of those things will happen in the swing. Okay, you won't do any of them. So right here, he's already got an unnatural move to kind of try to turn his shoulder around his body, and he's not allowing his elbow to be free to move, right? So the first thing I see is he never gets his elbow underneath his hands, right? He never gets it to here. And that's a staple part of the swing. You have to think about, getting your elbow stacked up underneath your hands, right? He doesn't want to do that because in order to do that, he would actually hit the wall with his elbow because it would all move together as one piece, which would be correct. Okay, so now he's saying that, as you turn, you really want to just make contact as you're turning together, right? Like it's almost like it's the body doing all the turning. So if you watch, it's kind of that whole turn together. So here I have an inside pitch. Soto's here, and he's going to make this turn kind of the same way, but I want you to pay attention to his front elbow. Does he pull it in, or does he just let it turn around his body? Right, it's just natural. He's not trying to do anything. It's just an organic turn. He's not trying to manipulate anything because when you try to, you're obviously late. You're trying to change your swing. You're trying to create some space that'll allow you to get a ball you don't think you can get to, right? So now let's think about his knob on Soto, getting around the corner, getting to, facing right field, if you want to say it. And then the barrel, as he starts to turn it, he's going to throw it in the direction that he was pointing the knob. So he's trying to get that knob around the corner so he can throw the barrel, throw the bat head. All right, so you see this nice tight turn. Well, this is on an inside pitch, right? We don't know what was in his thought process. We don't know the count. We don't know the sequence of pitches. We don't know his pitch eliminating, right? He might have been thinking, away, trying to cover both sides. He might have been in a 2-strike count. I don't know. He may have been looking away and just that good to react to this. I mean, there's so many variables we just don't understand why why guys swing the way they do on certain pitches, but the extension's there. So he's tight turn. I like this swing. I like if you can get your barrel in nice and tight to your body where you're not too far out in front, you allow yourself more room for error with off-speed pitches. So it just makes a lot more sense if you start to make these turns on inside pitches. But, all right, so we've kind of covered that. Let's go into the next thing that we see. This kind of gets lengthy. I mean, there's a lot of detail and stuff that, makes no sense to me when you start to talk about the actual swing. All right, so now let's look at, we're going to go into this, okay? So we're going to go into plate coverage. So we have an instructor here who's talking about, pitches away, middle, and the line that they travel on, which I agree with. There's obviously the pitches away, you want to be a little deeper in your swing. Your hands would still be out in front, but the barrel will still, trail your hands quite a bit on the away pitches. Obviously, on the pitches inside, your barrel will get out in front of your hands. So let's just kind of go into it. So the very first, I'm going to mark some green spots on the ground, and what that first spot was his first stride on the pitch away. Okay. Now this is the second stride for the pitch middle. Okay, and then on the third swing, he strides all the way over here. And I'm just going to tell you right now, you can't do this at a high level. You don't have the option to just start striding where you think the ball's going. It's not that easy. You have very little time to react. The ball is going to run, late at times, and you're going to want to be ready in a very balanced position. So when I see coaches teaching, movements that are incorrect, like covering the plate, it's ridiculous because you're limiting your athletes to getting to a higher level on something so simple that they just need to process the information and utilize it in their practice schedule. So let's watch Albert, right? He picks his foot up, puts it down. He just does that. And then look at this nice high pitch, how he comes through it, nice and level. I mean, his hands are moving through space, square, right? He's not trying to lift. And we're going to get into some of these later in this video because you're going to start to see, guys, why I feel like guys can improve their swings in the big leagues even if they do a couple of different things. So, we got, 3 different pitches, same stride. It's all the same, right? He's not going to change anything. All right, so let's move on. We've covered that. Let's kind of get into the next video that we have. We'll try to keep this under 10 minutes if we can. There's quite a few things here, so. And you see what I'm getting at. This isn't hard to think of, but when you're teaching your kids these things, you got to really be careful on how you're teaching them because you can really do damage, right? So let's talk about a little bit of the rotational stuff that we see being taught, okay? So these over-rotational swings, right? So you see this, this part of the swing, we'll blow it up a little bit, but this part of the swing, when he gets into here, we start to see this really rotational lift of the hands, right? And do you see any big league guys really doing that? I mean, let's look at this plane and how he moves around his body with this, right? So we're going to see his hands move, nice and clean around the body. And I'm going to show you some guys that don't. But those guys I think can improve. All right, so let's talk about rotation, right? In this video, guys are talking about an elite, swing. This is an elite rotational swing. I don't know the exact word they use, but they use something in those effect. But I want you to see something, and this is important because I don't understand how people don't understand the logic and how torque works. Okay, so I want you to see her back hip right now, right? Would you guys agree that she's already starting to turn, right? Well, let's think about the logic in this. Her foot hasn't even touched the ground yet. Why would we be turning if you haven't even locked in? It doesn't make any sense. You don't want that process to start early. And I'm going to give you an analogy. Grab a jar of pickles, right? Put your hand on the lid. Now set that on the counter, but do not take your other hand to hold it, right? Now just spin it. Can you open the lid? No. Same thing here. You're not getting any leverage to open it, right? So I want you to think about your hands being your feet in this video, right? So that's your other hand that's going to hold the jar. Now when you twist, you're getting leverage. Okay, so if you're twisting before you get leverage, she doesn't get into the ground until right there. Like that's in the ground. That's where she's actually in the ground. She's way too premature with her turn. She's missing out on a lot of potential energy. So when you see these positions, you don't understand that her heel should still be on the ground, right? She shouldn't have spun the leg. She should have sunk the leg, right? And so that's where I'm seeing all these inconsistencies in the swing that make no sense to me. So can she hit? Probably, but that doesn't mean she's maxing her potential. Okay, so let's get into who a couple things with Judge that I think a lot of guys could probably benefit and do a better job at. But I'm gonna show you like his low pitches, right? A pitch that's below the belt, right? He does a good job of trying to clean his lines up when he starts to get down in the zone. But when he's up in the zone, let's go over here. There's a plate coverage thing, right? So we got this girl. She's and this is one of those guys. Here's a stride right there. All right, you can see where she's mapped her stride, but watch, it's an inside pitch, and so I want you to see what she does. She tries to create space by getting out of the way, right? She's trying to get out of the way to try to create some space, right? So she's landing unbalanced and trying to get out of the way, right? We don't want that. So now let's watch the next pitch, and she strides completely closed. So she lands in two different places. Right here, she's 6 to 8 inches off, and then when she strides to the other part of the plate, she's only 3 or 4 inches off. I cannot stress to you enough, if you want to hit at a high level, you don't have that kind of time to start doing that. You start closing off on an outside pitch that you're used to moving on, and that ball is moving in. Good luck. I mean, it's just not going to happen for you. So, that's something that hitters should really be aware of. I'm not going to get into what he talks about in this video because it's absolutely ridiculous. But okay, so let's look at this one on Judge, because this is kind of what I wanted to go over. So he's got this higher pitch, right? And I'm going to try to use a good example of a higher pitch. So here's a Soler with a much higher pitch, and I want you to see how the plane of this ball coming in, right? And so we can kind of see it. We can look and map kind of at where the pitch is coming from and where it's going to. But we can start to see that his barrel is actually below the ball, and he's going to have to raise up to try to find it, right? So he's got to raise up to try to get it. So at some point, he's not on plane right here. This is get thrown right past him, right? It's because of how he's trying to enter with those hands. And you can see it. Like, his bone is pointing to the sky, right? And this is a very difficult way to try to hit. And we know you got to try to stay on plane. So, this may be a big reason why he strikes out on pitches up. Then he has to start cheating and look up. So he gets his home runs up by trying to cheat. And now when you start cheating up, now all of a sudden breaking balls down and stuff away is tougher, right? So you just play this chess game of trying to figure out, who's throwing what, where are they throwing it, and what swing do I need to bring, right? And that's a hard way to play the game. So I'm just going to show you Soler, who's got a high pitch above the belt, right? Kind of the same location as he does, but you can see that he's trying to commit to a much cleaner line when he gets to plane, right? So when he gets to plane, he's working, he's trying to work that bottom hand to stay in a nice clean line so he can move through impact, right? So he's trying to, you can see the glove, and his bat tries to move through that line as best as he can, right? High pitches are tough because of that, right? It doesn't make it easy. But if we looked at his, plane, and we wanted to start to work through plane, then we would see this, and we would see, his hand starting to raise up. And that's just a bad recipe for hitting. I mean, he's a big leaguer. He can get away with it. But when I see young kids trying to do this, you're going to struggle. Unless you're the 1% Judge type where your vision's so good you can get away with a lot of things, then I would suggest not doing it. You're just going to fail. So, let's talk about one more. I think I might have covered everything. And then we'll go back into the very beginning when we talked about, the rotational part of the swing on an inside pitch, how tight you turn. Well, when you start to talk about pitches out over the plate, look where his knob is. It's pointing to right field right now when he releases his hands through that area, right? He's trying to throw them over there. So you can't sit there and tell me that you're not getting extended on pitches that get away from you, right? So these cookie cutter approaches where it's all about the body and never about the hands, you're setting everybody up to fail, right? Look at this flat plane, That's a pitch that's up in the zone. I mean, he's not raising up, right? So when he gets to flat plane, you start to see this is a high pitch, right? So we get to this flat plane and we start to see where he's at. And he's moving through a flat plane. He's not trying to work his hands up to the sky. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I mean, if guys want to hit for average and power, flattening out your swing, I guess that's a term we can use. I mean, as long as your barrel is perpendicular to your spine and you move your hands through space, as square as you can, as if you were putting them on a table, and just letting them run across that table. And now take that table and turn it on edge, and now you've got a nice clean line that you're working on. But yeah, I mean, I know this is a long video, but I see all these things being taught, and there's more of them. I mean, I haven't gotten into a lot of them. I mean, here's another example of a guy who just, I mean, what did he hit? 15 home runs in like 2 days. I mean, it was something ridiculous. But you're not going to sit there and tell me that when guys get to this clean line, and they start to I would say eject the top hand, throw the barrel with the top hand. You're not going to sit there and tell me that these guys that are hitting home runs aren't clean with those lines. That's a clean line right there. Maybe that's why he's hitting bombs. So swinging up, it's irrelevant. It's not part of the swing. It's where guys are starting to fail, and you're going to just see more and more failure, as it's being taught to our youth. So I would say something that we need to make sure we do a better job of, plate coverage, working on how we're getting to high pitches in the zone. All those things are extremely important for development as you get older. So, all right, I think I covered everything. Hope you found some value in this video.